I wanted to go back to something you mentioned about Tite Coret, which is that he was a journalist, you know, yes. And you've also worked as a journalist. Mm-hmm. And I also think about how the lines between art and politics in Latin America are sometimes more blurred. You know, Aimé Césaire served in politics, but was also a poet. You know, Gabo wrote for newspapers as well as writing novels. And I'm wondering why you think that is and what the strength of that is.
I guess that, first of all, in Latin America, we're all storytellers. Mm-hmm. So I remember, I mean, I was born in the days where there was no television. So in those days, the families used to get together and ask each other, you know, what did you do today? Sometimes somebody would sing. If you had neighbors and you shared a patio, which we would call El Solar, mm-hmm. then we would go out there in the afternoons after the clothes had been taken out. And then we would all sit down and then exchange stories or sing or whatnot. So I think that out of that storytelling background, mm-hmm. Perhaps the seed to report on events mm-hmm. other than the ones that occur to you was born for me. Mm-hmm. I found that what was around me was a fountain of inspiration to write. And it's an interesting thing that when I got to New York in 1974, mm-hmm. I was surprised that the people who were writing music, popular music at the time, were not writing about what was around them.
Right.
For instance, I wrote a song called El Número 6, mm-hmm. which is about a subway, mm-hmm. a number 6 subway. Mm-hmm. And it was the second song written about a subway in New York. The first one was by Duke Ellington, wow. who wrote Take the A Train.
That's shocking.
And I couldn't understand. I said, you know, why didn't someone write about the subway before? But again, I guess it's because people didn't feel that to write about what was around them mm-hmm. or report events about life, reality, was something that they cared for in terms of commercial music.
Yeah, that makes sense. Although there's also, of course, all these blues and folk traditions that were not necessarily at the popular level at that moment, but that are part of that Pan-American tradition of storytelling through
Absolutely,
music.
But they were telling, the thing is that the song became a hit.
Right, exactly,
So
the hit.
If it became a hit, it's because people identified with it.
Uh-huh.
And if they identified with it, then it became commercial. Mm-hmm. You know, this is the way it goes. The first thing they'll tell you is, "Oh, don't write about that." Mm-hmm. People are not going to like that. Who says that?
You proved it wasn't so.
Yeah, but who says that? Usually people who think that success is to copy the success of somebody else.
Right.
So their notion of success is let's repeat things.
Instead of imagining what's possible.
Right, exactly. But also it's a monumental way of disrespecting the audience.
Of course.
I always thought the audience was smarter than me,
yes.
or as smart as me. I never thought the audience wasn't smart.
No.
So and then I was always part of the audience. So I felt if I like it, everybody's going to like it.
Exactly. Well, I feel that's very Latin American too, that sense of there not being such a strong line between the artist and the audience, like you were talking about in Solar.
Right.
And in that space, who the performer isn't necessarily so set. You can always step into the other role.
Absolutely.
Which creates a more democratic sensibility, I think.
And also, it's like, I remember once talking to Gabo, we were talking one day about inspiration. Mm-hmm. And, you know, where did inspiration come from? And he was telling me that it is at times, it is true, at times you face yourself with the blank paper. Mm-hmm. What am I going to do? But in reality, he was telling me that he said to me, if you ever have a block and you don't know what to write about, he said, buy the newspaper, get a newspaper. And he said, go to the classifieds. To the classifieds, yes. Classified section. I said, okay. because this thing was this. Okay, so you go to the classified sections, and there's a little thing that says, se vende jaula.
Ya tenemos la canción.
You know, se vende una jaula, but it's a bird cage.
Yeah.
It's a bird cage for sale. Okay.
Why?
What happened to the bird?
And then you have a bird, so you already have music in there.
No, but what happened to the bird? It's empty. What happened to the bird? Did he die? Did he escape? What kind of bird was it? Did they like the bird?
Mm-hmm.
Why
did they kill the bird?
Why didn't they? Did they eat it?
You know?
Why didn't they buy another one? I mean, right there.
Let me lay a beat down. I think that there's something here. We could do something with
but
this.
All of a sudden, you have a little short story.
Right, like that Hemingway story, baby shoes never been worn, or whatever.
So you don't really have to claim that you don't know what to do and what to write about. And in Latin America, you just come out and you're gonna see the most fantastic things be dealt with in the most mundane way.
I think
surrealism had to be invented in France. We live it every day in Latin America.
I think he says that in his Nobel Prize speech. He says something about how our struggle has been to render our lives believable, not more fantastic, but even just credible.
Well, reality can defy fiction. You have Trump, for example.
Wow, right, or the reign of fiction. For the reign of fiction.
You could not imagine somebody that stupid.
Well, collectively, we somehow did imagine him. But transitioning from Trump, as we all aim to do, even though his roots remain with us, I am thinking about inspiration and kind of these more spiritual questions about how we get inspired, although you're talking about more literal events. It makes me think of how so much of your music has little breaks or calls out to African diasporic religious traditions, you know, whether it's Ayúdame Babalao, you know, the influence of that is definitely there in your music. And I'm wondering how those traditions have affected your thinking about decisiones or sorpresas de la vida, like how that's conditioned your thinking about the future, or if there's a special influence there.
The thing is that I find it very interesting to reflect on events that also are part of areas that I am not familiar with, but that I have heard about. The African religions, all of the African religions. When I got into New York in 1974, and it was a very popular thing to do Santo in New York City. And all the religions, Cuban religions, have been rediscovered by many musicians here in New York. Cuban oriented music was the one that was defining all the
foundation for everything.
For Fania and for all the music that was being at the time considered as the most popular salsa productions. So I was familiar with some parts of the religion, but I was not into it. I never got the collares. I never did Santo.
Right.
The one thing I did know about it was, and this was my mother, who was Cuban and was born in Regla.
Oh, she was.
In Havana. She told me once, do not get involved in things you don't understand. And always show respect.
That's right.
Don't start repeating things because some people repeated something because they don't know what they're saying. And you may be, instead of saying something positive, you may say something negative, which is going to create bad consequences. So, and I was very, very aware of that. Once I wrote a song called Canto Nietzsche, and they changed the title to Canto Abacua, which was a mistake.
Abacua is a secret and private religion.
The song had nothing to do with Abacua. Yeah. And I actually have re-recorded it and changed the name, the title to Canto Nietzsche. But the fact that the religion was a part of urban reality as well, the Cuban religion also made me incorporate it into my description of everyday life. with limitations. You know, you have people like Pedrito Martinez, who is an authority in the area. And if I were to do something, I would ask someone like him, or would have asked Ulito Collazo, or people who know about certain things that I don't know about.
Absolutely.
But always showing respect. I wrote a song once called Ovalue, which was based on one version of the story of Babalu, one Yoruba version of it. And I educated myself about it, what to write, what to say. I once did the sonels for a song called Nina. And I also educated myself what it was that I was going to say, so I would not be disrespectful to the religion, nor disrespectful to the people who follow it and venerate it.
So it's almost a model of journalistic ethics in a way as well.
You have to be objective and educate yourself before you do something like that, absolutely.
But also part of the way of being objective is having a kind of subjective care for the people and connection to the people.
It's a respect, and that's the ultimate respect that you deserve to present to the people that are going to be listening to what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Write about, and this is another thing also that Carlos Fuente and all those guys, Monsiváis and Gabo, all those guys used to tell me, write about what you know, write about what you know. That's what we all do. You write about what you know.
Yes. I am interested, though, in your description of how those traditions enter like New York daily life, because I think that's still true today in Latino communities, uptown, Black and Latino communities. And it makes me think about these, our different categories of community that we occupy. And you played a really important role in, I think, helping us imagine what it might be to be Latino, rather than simply, Puerto Rican, Panamanian, whatever it may be. And I'm wondering sort of what because of course you always will be Panamanian, and you're also Caribbean in the sense that, you have a forebear from St. Lucia, and Panama is already kind of a Caribbean country and all of that, but you're also Central American, and then you're also Latino. And I'm wondering what determines how you identify in the moment. And
I think what happens is, in order to be Latin American, you have to leave your country in Latin America.
To become Latino.
Yeah, when you're in Panama, you're a Panamanian. When you're in Chile, you're a Chilean. When you're in Puerto Rico, you're a Puerto Rican. When you leave your country and you come to the United States or Europe or Canada, you're a Latin American, whether you like it or not. And there's a tremendous level of ignorance about Latin America that makes people think that we all eat the same things. We all dance tango, and we all have a rose in our mouth, and we all like bullfighting, and and all these crazy notions that have been fed by bad movies and written by people who have no clue what Latin America is or what the differences are between a Mexican and a Cuban. However those differences exist, there is one continuous reality. Is we all come from the same culture. Basically, we all come from the same backgrounds.
When you say the same culture and the same background,
we all speak Spanish. Most of us are
not
Catholic.
Brazilians.
Well, the Brazilians are like pretty much like a world apart. But I think that is also been part of the design, that a choice. They didn't need to live like that. I think that they should have made more effort to make more contact with the rest of the world, of Latin America. But that can also be said about the Paraguayans and Uruguay. They're very, very much to the south, and there's been very little opportunity to establish common ground.
I feel like I don't know enough about those specific countries to respond, but I feel like you're getting into the fact that there really are so many differences.
The bottom line is we're all the same in the sense that we are, for instance, in this country, nobody's going to make a differentiation between a Panamanian and a Cuban.
Right.
But yet,
I hardly know that Panamanian.
But yet we do that. We act like tribes, which is one of the reasons why we have no political power to speak of. And we have no one that represents everyone. We have not learned how to present our common needs under one voice. We continue to act like fingers and not like a hand. And because of that, we are pretty much dismissed politically, although we are the biggest minority group right now in this country. And unless we start paying attention to the fact of our common interests, and unless we start paying attention to the fact that we're all treated as Latin Americans, we should maybe, we're not going to really have an opportunity to be recognized for the amount of contributions that we present daily, all of us,
of course,
in this country.
I mean,
in any country.
I think that this is, at the heart of some of the questions that have been going on this weekend and that we've been trying to think about Latinidad today. And I'm wondering, when you say we haven't figured out how to articulate our common interests or our common culture, I'm curious what you see as the common interests among Latinos and the common culture.
The first common
beyond kind of a mutual oppression.
The first common interest is not to be discriminated against. That's the first common interest. Just because we're Latinos doesn't mean that we're second or third or fourth kind of human beings.
Of course.
And yet, if everything seems to be defined by political action, it's all the big changes have been occurred in this country in terms of civil rights have occurred because of a mobilization of people.
Definitely. And solidarity.
The right wing has never, ever, ever given you anything. No. So you have to earn it. And when I say, and the left, we're never going to give you freedom also unless you mobilize for it. So, and I'm talking about left in the countries that have leftist dictatorships and the countries that have right wing, neither of the extremes are going to give you anything unless you demand it. And the way to do that is by mobilization, civic mobilization. And it happened with Rosa Parks in the South. And that was one of the catalysts, for the civil rights movement. And we, on the other hand, most of us who are immigrants feel grateful that we had the opportunity to be here, to work. And we feel like, we all want to go back someday to our country of origin. So we're not going to get involved in things. And that's a mistake, because while we're here, we're going to continue to be affected by what happens and doesn't happen. So we need to find a way where we stop saying, oh no, I'm not going to pay attention to this guy because he's not from where I am from. And whenever there is a candidate that is speaking for the right issue, we should give that candidate a consideration as well. Sometimes also we do not support our own candidates for whatever reasons. Oh, because I'm not going to support a Cuban, or I'm not going to support a Mexican. Oh, I know, oh, he's Puerto Rican. Oh, no, he's Dominican.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if there's value in Latinidad, it's partly that it forces us to confront these differences of country, culture, race, and class within the categories, so that in order to have a group, in order to build the kind of political power you're talking about, these issues have to be worked through in order to achieve solidarity.
But first of all, we're all human beings. That's the first thing. We're all human beings. We're just born. Nobody chooses where they're going to be born. Nobody chooses their race. Nobody chooses their sex. But we can choose what kind of life we're going to have. Destinies are not inherited. Destinies are made. So we can make our own destiny, no matter where we come from, no matter what the reality was that our parents or great grandparents or great parents lived under. But for that, we need to move. We need to mobilize. We need to do something. And part of that action requires a responsibility. And we have to be responsible, and we have to stop thinking that somehow somebody else is going to set us free.
Yeah, your description of kind of the need to be active reminds me of something that people sometimes say about improvisation, which is, I want to be ready. And I'm wondering how your experience improvising as a musician, whether that has any relationship to kind of your openness and responsiveness to current events.
Well, I mean, you improvise when you can. I don't, for instance, when I'm going to record. It's an
important lesson, yeah.
When I'm going to record, I don't improvise.
No.
If I'm going to record, and I'll tell you the difference. If you're going to, when I go to sing a song that requires a chorus response, that the response is called soneo or improvisation. I got a lesson from Ismael Rivera, the best sonero of all, in my opinion.
De acuerdo. You're not gonna.
With all due respect to every single great sonero that exists and has existed and will exist.
Shout out to San Force.
Ismael told me, because I went to, once Ismael was doing an album, and actually in that album, if I'm not wrong, he recorded Las Caras Lindas de Mi Gente Negra, that was written by Tite Curet Alonso. And
so many hits, Tite Curet.
Oh, yeah. And Ismael asked specifically for Hector Lavoe and for me to be in the chorus, doing the chorus.
Wow.
So when I showed up, Hector was there already, because, you know, Hector respected Ismael as I did. We were both there. If Ismael said be here at 1, we were there at 12.
Well, that's what I did today for you.
Okay, well, good, thank you. And so the thing is that when we got there, I saw Ismael had some soneos written, which I did. But I had felt kind of guilty because I thought, oh no, when you go to record, you have to improvise. And I mentioned to Ismael, I said, I write my soneos too. And he said, I write when I'm going to sing. And he said, when you're going to record, make sure you know what you're going to do, because whatever you say there is going to stay there forever in that record. You don't want to hear that 5 years from now and go, oh my God, look what oh God.
We suffer now with the internet, everything's recorded.
So he said, know exactly what you have to, what you're going to say. When you're in the live performance, improvise. Look at what's happening around you. Let the audience, you know, feed your ideas. But when you're going to record, do not improvise. Having said that, improvisation is part of Latin music, salsa music, and that's a motorcycle outside. I have to say that so you don't think it's something else. And you have to. Again, you improvise in salsa music just as you improvise in jazz.
Yeah, Black traditions of improvisation.
Yeah, musicians improvise and percussionists improvise. So singers must know how to improvise, especially when you're doing dancing music, because the period of the recording of the song becomes longer. So you have to be constantly feeding the choro.
And the dancers want the break too, in order to show what they can do and to improvise as well. I actually have a question about language. We're here talking in English, and I remember when we had our tech check, you said, oh, you know, I thought we would be talking in Spanish, and that sometimes, you know, part of your audience would criticize you.
Oh, they will come and say, what's the matter with you, Rubén? You forgot to speak Spanish?
¿Qué pasa? And of course, and immediately Graciela was like, oh, pero Carina puede hacer la entrevista en español. Y yo como, I guess I can. But what I'm curious about is I feel like we're at a moment in music where there's a little bit more bilingualism on the radio. Yeah. Like Bad Bunny just had those, you know, #1 US pop chart album all in Spanish, or a Colombian artist like Galiuchis, who has Spanish and English on the same album. And I'm wondering how you see the future of these languages.
I did a song called What Happened a while ago.
You've always had Spanglish and English elements in your music.
Bobby Rodriguez y la compañía recorded it, What Happened. That was like Spanish and English. in English.
So many moments. I want to live in America.
Yeah, I think that it's part of, it's not an affectation. It's part of the reality of living in New York City.
Exactly.
And living in the United States. And but specifically in New York, Spanglish that's the way people talk. So in itself, it's like a new language that is born out of the daily reality and the contact within the Latino community and the Anglo community. So you have that scenario where people are, mixing both languages, and I don't see that as something that in any way compromises your identity.
No.
I think that some people maybe go to the extremes, and I think that.
In what sense?
For instance, I am in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I should know how to speak English, just like a North American goes to Panama. And to live in Panama, I would expect him or her to learn to speak Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's absurd to go to a country and not learn the language of the place where you're living. I think that it's not a very smart idea. It's not very respectful. And it's definitely going to create a problem for you in terms of communicating with people and getting yourself ahead and surviving in an environment. I mean, if I lived in France, I would be speaking French.
Of course.
And I would have to learn to speak French. It's not like I'm going to avoid talking to French, and all the French, they got to learn to speak Spanish to communicate with me. That's absurd. So here in New York, of course, you're going to have that mixture between English and Spanish. Absolutely. And the same is going to find it in Mexico. In East LA, between Mexicans and English.
Right. That's true. I realize that I don't want to be selfish with the time asking questions, because there are a bunch of people watching here too who have questions to ask. And I just received a really beautiful one from Vanessa Angelica Villarreal. And she asks, I'm interested in the split between English and Spanish music. Here we are, same theme. Spanish as collective storytelling about place memory. In the US, there's this idea of musical genius because of individualism and celebrity. Who are some unsung Latin music geniuses who never received their flowers?
A lot, many. Angelica, let me say this. It's not just that some of the people that we know that have not been recognized. Imagine the ones we don't know that are writing better music than I have, or sing better than I will ever sing, or write better than I write, and we don't know who they are. And that's because, unfortunately, the way that this whole thing is set up prevents it from happening, even through the internet. In the internet now, you have the opportunity, for instance, if you're a songwriter, to write your own song and sing it in the internet and put it in your webpage. And in my day, in order to do that, you needed to sign a contract. And usually they rip you off when you did that. But what happens now is that you can do that on your own, but then who knows that you did that? How do you make people aware that you are out there? That's the big, huge problem. I try to solve that by letting people who are not known send me things. I check them out, and if they're okay, I put them in my webpage, and where I have people that come to see me, and all of a sudden, then now they're gonna see you, and then you put your own link, and then they can go to you, and then they find you. And I wish that every single person that has that is a webpage and is famous would also open the webpage for other people and have them send their stuff, and then their songs or whatever. And then you look at them, and if you consider that they have the necessary quality, then put it in your webpage and give them an opportunity to be known.
This is a beautiful ethic of mutual aid that I think is really important. And I just want to say to any of our listeners who haven't checked out the webpage of Rubén Blades, it's an amazing resource, because he also keeps a political blog and a blog about daily life.
But also, people send me videos. They send me all kinds of things. I had a thing called the show de Rubén Blades, and the people send me videos and Quinto Parpadeo. There were like groups from Spain and groups from like in India. I had a Hindu version of Bésame Mucho that I was like, still to this day, it's like, wow. You know, so Stay Homas from Barcelona. It's like a group that we saw them on the internet, and like now I did something with them. Making movies, the rock band from Kansas. You know, so there you go.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Let's see about. We have another one. Oh, that's from a mayoral campaign text message. Not a question from the audience. I have kind of a niche question, which is, we've been thinking, I feel like we've been thinking so much in recent years about Afrofuturism, Sen Ra, stuff like that. And I was at a museum exhibit in Santurce a few months ago that was partly about the salsa album covers. And I saw the cover for Orquestra Aragon's Me Voy para la Luna, and I saw the cover for Ray Barretto's Que Viva la Música, which looks kind of a little bit to me like your cover for Buscando America. And I'm wondering if you see kind of if there's such a thing as Latinos futurism. And
I think that part of it is also done in terms of humor.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, let me go to the moon so I can get away from my neighbor, or let me go through the moon so I can get away from this person or this problem. That's part of that. But I think also it's like in general, spiritualism is always going to be present in everything we do.
Absolutely.
I mean, superstition is not going to go away. It's going to stay with us on the one hand, and also spiritual contributions are needed in order to make your product more rounded.
We have another question from a fellow Central American, the poet Sheila Maldonado. Vanessa is also a writer. I know these are my friends asking questions. Sheila asks, she says, thank you always for repping Central America. Her family's from Honduras. In New York through your music, what was it like to try to bring visibility to Central America in the 70s in the city?
Well, I mean, when I first got here, and people would say, like, where is he from? And I was not Puerto Rican, and I was not Cuban, and I was not Dominican. So it was like, and can he sing? And it's like, can he sing salsa? And we had two Panamanians, Camilo Azuquita and Meñique Barcas Negras, who had already been a part of the scene, salsa scene. Meñique Barcas Negra with Tito Puente, singing for Tito Puente.
Wow.
And and Camila Azuquita was singing with Caco, and then with Cortijo. So, but even so, when I first got in, it was like Panamanian. I don't know. So I had to sort of convince people that I could do it. And one thing that helped me also was that I was writing my own material. That helped tremendously, because I was not only singing, but I was also writing, so that I wrote songs. I wrote a song for Bobby Cruz and Richie Ray, Guaguancó Triste, and I wrote a La Esquina song for Emmanuel Miranda. So those two songs became hits.
Huge hits.
So then that sort of helped to create my credibility, even though I was a Panamanian musician and they weren't so familiar with what we could do in Panama. I think they're familiar with what we can do in Panama now.
Yeah, exactly. Reggaeton.
And in Central America.
Yeah, I mean, Panama has been really important for the history of Latin music, especially now. But I also I've been doing so much reading about the pre-colonial Caribbean recently, like the indigenous Caribbean. And it turns out that they've always said that Tainos, or the ancestors of the Tainos, came up through the Orinoco River Valley, but now they're learning more and more how connected. There was a whole other wave of migration from Central America. Sure. And geographically, you see how linked these regions are. So it makes sense.
Absolutely. They found gold jewelry made by indigenous groups in Panama, in Sitio Conte, in Coclé, they found jewelry made there, or febrería, very delicate jewelry. They have found it in Peru. So there was a connection. Absolutely.
So I'm going to go with one more question from the audience here, and it's from Roger Grandy, and I'm translating from the Spanish. He says, how important is tradition or traditions in your narrative work? Also, saludos desde Lima. Perú, hablando de Perú, mira.
I think tradition, we have to say, I would have to understand in what context. I mean, I follow the tradition of the storyteller, which is what we are, and I said it before. And throughout our lives, we all are storytellers. So I continue that tradition of the storyteller. As far as personal, I am a reflection of what I learned from my parents and from my neighborhood and my culture, you know, and I try to uphold those teachings by trying to live the most honest way I can possibly, and not fall into the trap of fame or materialism or lack of spiritualism. So I find that very important. On the other hand, it is also a good thing to make yourself be an all-around person, to never lose a connection of who you are, what your background is. It's always very important. You know, I have a connection with Panama that goes beyond the distance. It's always in me. And the things that I've learned, the things that my teachers, my professors, my neighborhoods, my culture, my idiosyncrasy provided with. So that is that tradition, that teaching is with me and has made me what I am today.
Okay, thinking about how Panama is always with you. I was just thinking about this song so much as we were talking about you walking over here from your place uptown to this place in Harlem.
I walked 5 miles.
Rubén Blades walked 5 miles, and only at the last moment, a park intervened. El Monte de Uptown.
15,000 steps.
And it made me think of your song Buscando Guayaba, and where it's like,
I look for a lot of guayaba today.
But did you find la casa dorada, pero la guayaba?
I think you're always looking for. I think the human experience is one of continuous search for perfection, or for not perfection but satisfactions. What ends up happening is, as you get older, and you were talking about the future, I have more past than future, but I can tell you that the future
in this form,
but the future really can only be enjoyed if you take the best from the past and fix the mistakes of the past, and then you can project that result into a better enjoyment of whatever time you have left. And that is very, very important. And the other thing is, you have to understand the age really is not the problem. The problem is indifference. If you become indifferent, if you don't care about what's around you, if you lose curiosity, then you might as well be dead. So as long as you have curiosity, as long as you're not indifferent, you have all the future of the world.
Seguimos buscando Guayaba, buscando América. This was Rubén Blades, el gran Rubén Blades with the Latino Media Summit. And by the way, I'm Carina Del Valle Schorske. Forgot to say that.
Thank you, Carina. Aplauso para Carina. Aplauso
Thank
para
you,
Carina.
audience. Graciela.
Thank you. Gracias.